Part of the reason al-Abdaly chose Stockholm was to make a political statement about the diversification of views there and also about Sweden's role in Afghanistan. Police have long had an interest in British universities, and I think they maintain that interest even now. In 2008 there was a Centre for Social Cohesion report that said a third of Muslim respondents felt that violence in the name of religion was justified, and I think that remains true to this day, and I think that police probably still keep their eye on what goes on at universities. But part of the problem is that you can't identify the difference between somebody who has extreme views, which is quite popular throughout British universities because they're centres of learning and they encourage freedom of thought, the difference between somebody with extreme views and somebody who's going to be a violent extremist. And that's a very difficult line to toe, and this is one of the issues that is frequently cited as a problem with the Prevent agenda, is that it doesn't differentiate between extremism and violent extremism until its latest manifestation. But even in this latest product of Prevent, it's still not clear how you go down that route of delineating between extremist and violent extremist. The issue of al-Abdaly leaving the mosque was, his views were challenged by the chairman of the mosque, and although he wasn't cited personally, it was the general opinion of extremism and the sort of justification for violence and terroristic violence and suicide bombing. And it was after the general speech in front of all the members of the Islamic Centre that al-Abdaly stormed out. I think one of the major issues about moderates and extremists within the Islamic world, and particularly in the UK within the mosques and the Islamic centres throughout the UK, is that it's very difficult to identify the difference between somebody who is holding extreme views and somebody who is willing to go into open debate about it and somebody who's going to go and conduct violence afterwards. And this again goes back to the key problem in Prevent, is that it doesn't differentiate between its target audiences. It wants to challenge violent extremism in the UK rather than extremism in the UK. As far as I understand it, the UK and Swedish authorities are working very closely. It's still a Swedish police investigation, although I understand that the UK police are helping with the inquiries. Luton has a long history of having a large Muslim population, and within that population it's easy enough for people with violent extremist ideas to hide out and possibly to recruit as well. That's the first reason why Luton has become a major site for extremism in the UK. The birth of the English Defence League there, I think, was largely a bit of sort of opposition to the birth and growth of extremism there. And the Islamic or the Islamist extremists there have been sort of wide and varied. There was Mohammed Sadiq Khan met the chap who sent him off to Pakistan there in the run-up to 7/7, and al-Abdaly moved into the region, so into the Lee Grove district of Luton, which was precisely where Mohammed Sadiq Khan met Q, as he was called. And the reason for the sort of polarisation of views is as a consequence of I think the very large proportion of extremist Muslims who seem to use this as a site and a location, partly for recruitment, but also as a base of operations. There are a number of failures to Prevent, but the key issue is that its direction, that its target audiences are misunderstood and have never been given clear guidelines on who is an acceptable person to use under the Prevent agenda to help you de-radicalise and to help you counter extremism, and who isn't. And at the same time, there's a very fine crossover between the extremists who you're trying to counter and those who you need to bring back into the agenda to help it work. Moreover, the issue of the police being the sort of the lead runners on Prevent requires them to have very high levels of trust with their local communities, because essentially people feel that when they pass information to the police about potentially endangered extremists or people who are going down the so-called escalator of extremism, they feel that they are backstabbing their own community, that they feel that there's a potential to be ostracised, and as such the police are required to have exceedingly high levels of trust between them and those often very diverse but small communities. And as yet, I think that's not been achieved by the police.